There's a silent social pattern that almost nobody analyzes honestly. A woman says, "I just get along with men better." And instantly the internet splits into two tribes. One side calls her a pick-me. The other calls her low drama. But almost nobody stops to ask the uncomfortable psychological question hiding underneath all of this. What if this preference is not about attention, not about superiority, not even about men, but about survival? Because beneath the surface of female social dynamics exists something researchers in social psychology call relational aggression. Not physical aggression, not obvious hostility, but subtle warfare, exclusion, status games, social punishment, emotional ambiguity, indirect criticism hidden inside politeness, competition disguised as concern. And for certain personalities, especially highly analytical women, highly sensitive women, or women who experienced social betrayal early in life, female social environments can begin to feel psychologically exhausting. Not because women are worse, but because female bonding often operates through emotional calibration at a much deeper level, and that depth can feel beautiful or terrifying. The fascinating part is this. Many women who prefer male circles are not escaping women. They are escaping emotional complexity, and that changes the entire conversation. Because now we are no longer discussing stereotypes. We are discussing attachment psychology, social cognition, identity defense mechanisms, and the hidden cost of emotional safety. One woman loses herself trying to fit into traditional female expectations. Another builds armor by becoming one of the guys. A third discovers too late that activity-based male friendships cannot always provide emotional containment during grief, motherhood, heartbreak, or identity collapse. And suddenly the entire topic becomes much deeper than social media labels. Because this is not really about friendship. It's about where a human being feels psychologically safe. And that safety has a story behind it. One of the most famous examples came from the world of technology. Sheryl Sandberg. Long before becoming the COO of Meta and one of the most influential women in Silicon Valley, Sandberg spoke openly about existing in male-dominated environments for most of her career. What fascinated psychologists wasn't simply that she worked with men, it was how she adapted emotionally to survive those spaces. Silicon Valley in the early 2000s rewarded traits associated with what psychologists call systemizing cognition. Directness, competitiveness, problem-solving, status through performance. Emotion was secondary. Efficiency was currency. And many women who succeeded there unconsciously learned to suppress behaviors associated with traditional feminine social bonding. Not because femininity was weak, but because the environment punished emotional complexity. Sandberg later described moments where women in leadership felt pressure to become emotionally simpler versions of themselves in order to survive male professional cultures. That matters psychologically, because when a woman repeatedly receives reinforcement for being low maintenance, logical, or not emotional like other women, the brain starts associating emotional distance with social reward. This is classic operant conditioning. The nervous system begins learning. Safety comes from minimizing emotional vulnerability. And this is where the one of the guys identity can slowly become armor. At first it feels freeing. No emotional decoding, no subtle tension, no social overanalysis, no exhausting emotional maintenance. Just direct communication. Problem. Solution. Move on. But over time, something fascinating happens. The same woman who feels safe in male circles may begin struggling when she needs deep emotional mirroring. Because male bonding and female bonding often operate through different psychological structures. Many male friendships are activity-centered. Gaming, sports, projects, humor, shared missions. Meanwhile, female friendships often involve emotional co-processing, discussing feelings, analyzing relationships, narrative intimacy, identity reflection. One structure reduces emotional friction. The other increases emotional depth. And depth can heal or expose wounds people spent years hiding. This tension became visible in the life of actress Megan Fox. For years, Fox openly discussed feeling more comfortable around men than women. Media outlets turned it into entertainment. But psychologically, her interviews revealed something deeper. She associated female environments with judgment and social hostility. Male groups felt simpler, safer, less emotionally invasive, but there was another layer hidden underneath. Fox also described struggling with belonging itself. That's important, because sometimes the issue is not women versus men. Sometimes it's unresolved social alienation. Psychologists call this defensive differentiation. A person creates identity distance from a group before the group can reject them first. In simple language, if I convince myself I'm different from other women, then their rejection hurts less. And suddenly the famous phrase, "I'm not like other girls," stops sounding arrogant and starts sounding defensive. This is why internet conversations about pick-me girls often become psychologically shallow, because they ignore motive. Not every woman in male circles is seeking validation. Some genuinely have interests, cognitive styles, or temperaments that align better with masculine social structures. Research on Big Five personality traits shows that women lower in neuroticism and higher in openness or systemizing sometimes prefer more direct and less emotionally layered group dynamics, but other women are unconsciously escaping emotional intimacy itself. And those are two completely different psychological realities. One is authentic alignment, the other is strategic avoidance. And from the outside, they can look identical. This became painfully clear in the story of Billie Eilish. At different points in interviews, Billie described feeling disconnected from traditional female social culture growing up. She often bonded more naturally with boys. Fans interpreted this as uniqueness. But later discussions revealed deeper layers involving trust, body image, emotional sensitivity, and feeling misunderstood socially. And this is where modern internet culture complicates everything. Because digital platforms reward the cool girl archetype enormously. The woman who doesn't cause drama, likes guy hobbies, doesn't overreact, is chill, is logical. Social media algorithms love this archetype because it contrasts sharply against emotional chaos. But hidden beneath that praise can be dangerous messaging. That emotional needs are weakness. That softness creates burden. That feminine emotional complexity is irrational. And eventually some women begin suppressing authentic emotional expression just to maintain social approval. Psychologically, this creates something called identity fragmentation. Externally, calm, cool, easygoing. Internally, emotionally starved. Because every human nervous system eventually needs emotional resonance. Not just conversation, not just humor, not just shared activities, but true emotional witnessing. And that is where many women who exclusively live inside male circles experience a silent loneliness nobody sees, especially during major life transitions. Divorce, loss, motherhood, anxiety, aging, emotional burnout. Because during these moments, logical problem-solving alone becomes insufficient. The nervous system often needs empathy before solutions, and empathy requires emotional patience. This exact dynamic appeared publicly in the life of Taylor Swift during different stages of her career. At certain periods, Swift became heavily criticized for maintaining close female friendships, then later criticized for distancing herself from them. The public kept reducing female friendship into optics, but psychologically, her evolving social circles reflected something deeper, Humans recalibrate relationships based on emotional developmental needs. In some phases of life, ambition dominates. In others, emotional intimacy becomes survival. And the healthiest people eventually learn something crucial. Masculine and feminine social dynamics are not enemies. They serve different psychological functions. One may provide stability, the other may provide emotional integration. The real danger begins when trauma forces a person into extremes. Because unresolved relational pain often creates binary thinking. Women are exhausting. Men are safer. Female friendships are fake. Men are less complicated. But psychology repeatedly shows that broad social generalizations usually hide unprocessed personal experiences. One betrayal becomes a worldview. One toxic friendship becomes a philosophy. One humiliating experience becomes identity. And the nervous system quietly reorganizes around avoidance. This brings us to one of the most fascinating real-world examples. Emma Watson. Watson spent years navigating both highly intellectual spaces and highly public social environments. In interviews, she discussed the importance of female support systems while also acknowledging how competitive and psychologically difficult female environments can become. That nuance matters, because mature psychology rejects extremes. Female friendships can contain extraordinary empathy and devastating relational aggression. Male friendships can contain simplicity and loyalty and emotional limitations. Neither side is psychologically complete on its own. The strongest social resilience usually emerges from integration. A woman capable of thriving in both worlds often develops direct communication, emotional intelligence, boundary setting, social adaptability, and secure attachment patterns. Not performance, not avoidance, not identity theater, actual emotional autonomy. And this is where the entire discussion changes. The real question is no longer, do women prefer men or women socially? The real question becomes, which environments allow a person to remain emotionally authentic without feeling psychologically threatened? Because some women become one of the guys to express their real personality freely. Others become one of the guys because emotional closeness with women activates unresolved fear. And understanding the difference requires deep honesty, not internet labels, not tribal judgment, not gender wars, just psychological truth. The truth that human beings move toward the environments where their nervous system feels least endangered. Sometimes that creates growth, sometimes it creates avoidance, and sometimes the very armor that protects someone from emotional pain also blocks the intimacy they secretly need most. That is the paradox hidden underneath this entire conversation. The search for safety can accidentally become isolation. And the people who look the most socially effortless are sometimes carrying the heaviest. Before you judge those 5 signs, understand something disturbing. The most dangerous form of low intelligence is not ignorance. It's the illusion of superiority. Because the moment a person believes they already understand everything, their mind stops evolving. And that's exactly why this next video might change the way you see yourself forever. It's appearing on your screen right now. 5 psychological signs you're not as smart as you think. Watch carefully. And if you enjoy deep psychological content like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.